Hey Sober, your copy of Retro Magazine came in. You got a really interesting article on NES What are you doing? Getting ready to work on another video. Are there going to be any puns in this one? Why, are you going to hit me again? Listen, I'm sorry, I just really hate puns. Let me give you some advice. What? Don't do a retro game. Everyone already knows about these older games. Do something new. I am doing something new. It came out this year. Good. And don't do any more Square games. You've done 3 already. People are going to start to think you're getting paid by them. Don't worry, this game wasn't made by Square Enix either. And no more puns? There's no puns. Well then, good luck. Hey, thanks. Alright, we're almost all set up. Let's record. Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about the Final Fantasy Mystic Quest HD Remastered. Damn it, Sober! Final Fantasy Mystic Quest was made by Square in 1992 in order to introduce new young players to a struggling RPG genre in the West. The game was flawed but developed a small cult following, but after its lukewarm reception and fairly scathing criticism, Squaresoft decided it would be best to wash their hands after this slow experiment and pretend it didn't happen. Sort of like that one time in college. So it came as a surprise to find that during my research on Mystic Quest, I found that there was a remastered version that was released in early March 2015. Surprising, but not entirely unprecedented. Square Enix is no stranger to remastering a franchise, having remade Final Fantasy IV no less than 7 times, releasing updated mobile ports of Final Fantasy 1 through 6, and a Final Fantasy X remaster with a possible upcoming Final Fantasy 7 and 12 remake, except it wasn't exactly made by Square Enix. The remaster is a product of Dark Design Games, an indie game development company based in the United Kingdom led by Jake Jackson, who was probably the only staff member of Dark Designs. Let's just check out their official company website to see if I can find any... Oh. Well, we'll just contact them on Twitter to see if we can find out more information regarding... Oh. I'm sure this is just a big misunderstanding. We'll just do a quick Google search and see what the word is on the... Oh... Well... As it turns out, the Mystic Quest Remaster wasn't even officially endorsed by Square Enix. Though Jake Jackson supposedly had permission from Square Enix Europe, the truth is far more controversial. According to Kisra Studios, who now owns and dismantled Dark Design Studios, Jake Jackson had forged a contract between himself and CEO of Square Enix America and Europe, Phil Rogers, and had scammed consumers out of pre-orders and given them malware-ridden software in return. Square Enix asked Kisra Studios to destroy any copies of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest Remaster, and it seemed that was it. The Final Fantasy Mystic Quest Remaster would never see the light of day. Fans were left with heartbreak knowing it was a lie, and it only cemented the feelings that the experience would never be revisited. But with the internet, nothing is truly lost. Now, any sane game journalist would just leave it right there. I mean, what's the point in reviewing a game that technically doesn't exist? What would be the point in that? It's not like I'm secretly hoping the game would be good or anything. Honestly, maybe things aren't all bad. AAA companies like Nintendo, Sega, and Square Enix has put a stop to several fan-made projects, most of which end up being very good. The Streets of Rage remake and Chrono Trigger Crimson Echoes being some of the most famous examples. Mystic Quest had a potential of being an excellent game, and it was only held back by its size limitation and target audience. So putting company politics aside, let's see if there was hope for the remaster. So our adventure starts off by searching the darkest corners of the internet to find a copy that isn't going to end up with me having to format my hard drive. After finding and uneasily installing Mystic Quest Remastered, we're... Oh no, it's happening already! Wait, we're led to a pop-up leading to what I think is an official Square Enix store? And a little button on the bottom that says OK with a smiley emoticon. Which I wouldn't say it's professional, but it's service with a smile? Then we're given a menu that isn't really sure how a menu is supposed to work, which I'll admit is leaving a really great first impression of what I can be expecting to do for the next couple of hours. Then there's this screen, which I guess allows us to set our AI to manual or auto. My antivirus continues to assure me it's fine, so we bravely wander forth on our adventure into the world of HD. The first thing you'll probably notice is that this is an RPG Maker game. RPG Maker is a game engine developed by Enterbrain to make Super Nintendo-esque role-playing games, whether you have a lot of experience or very little. Now, I'm going to go on record and say I don't think there's anything wrong with RPG Maker. In fact, I highly recommend looking into it if you have any interest in game design whatsoever. It's very simple to use and you can do a lot with it, but because of its simplicity, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence that this is going to be a great experience. We're treated to the same opening scene as the original, almost word for word. Village, focus tower, prophecy, monster, joke, fly away, and what looks like to be a short spasm slightly resembling a shrug. I'm not quite sure how I feel about this. It's nice that things haven't changed too drastically from the original version, but it really feels like a missed opportunity to show how different this remastering of Mystic Quest is going to be. So in the overworld, you'll definitely notice a major change to the graphic style. The overworld map is no longer a sprite, but what looks like to be a hand-drawn map. For the most part, it's fine, but there's a major issue. It was ripped straight from the original Mystic Quest. Not from the game itself, but pulled straight from official Square artwork. You'll notice the same from the monster sprites as well. In fact, it seems like there's very little original artwork at all. It's either from RPG Maker, assets from the original game, or taken from the official game artwork. Battle damage from the original is here, sometimes, though it looks like someone recently found out what Liquify did on Photoshop. But at least the character sprites look great, except these as well were originally stolen from YouTuber Leo Hightower without permission or credit initially. The music is the same mixture of old and new as well. You can tell that the new music wasn't intended to be used in the game because there's always a distinct cutoff as the music loops. The remastering of the music is passable, though it might be due to the fact that Dark Designs borrowed heavily from other sources. One track being a remix found on the original soundtrack, and several others being fan remixes that can be found on YouTube, and whether or not he had the permission to use them is dubious at best. This sort of hodgepodge of art styles make the game look completely disjointed. Seeing a high-resolution CGI monster next to a hand-drawn picture as super deformed sprites attack and faux orchestral battle music plays in the background. The entire game has little in the way of art direction. But probably the biggest issue with the remaster is that when compared to the original actually looks and sounds better. And that's not including my artistic liberties. To say that the presentation is flawed is a bit of an understatement. It would be more accurate to say that the game uses more stolen assets than your average Steam Greenlight game. That doesn't condemn it completely, however. What really matters most is the gameplay, and the original was lacking in that department, so now's the time for the remaster to really shine through. If you came right from playing the original Mystic Quest, it's a bit of a culture shock. The action mechanics from the original are missing. Since it's using the RPG Maker engine, it's understandable, but it is a major disappointment. Without those elements though, you really see the flaws in the dungeon design. The levels are either too boring or too winding with little to do or see. Things start to change up upon reaching the Ice Pyramid, but not really for the better. It becomes a standard hunt for 3 keys before you fight the boss. It also creates the cardinal sin of gaming by having a block-pushing puzzle that you immediately know the answer to but have to go through the long, arduous process of actually having to push the block. These new additions are blatant padding at the worst, or amateurish design at the best. To add to that, there are achievements now, but it seems like an arbitrary addition of clearing out battlefields, finding all the chests in a dungeon, or clearing out all the monsters. But the on-screen encounters and battlegrounds are still here, so we'll just go in. Wait, huh? No, I didn't mean... help! No! I'm sorry, please! Please! So... the original Mystic Quest was designed to introduce players who have never played RPGs before to the genre. As such, the combat was simple and the battles were fairly easy. This game, though. This game. Each creature acts like you just recently murdered their entire family. Hello, my name is Gatherer. You killed my father. Prepare to die. Encounters are just on a line of where it can be considered unbalanced. They hit way harder, some capable of killing your character within a round of combat. The status effects make their return with a vengeance. In the original, it was often just bad luck that they happened to use the right skill at the right time and would wipe you. In this iteration, you're hinging on them not using them in order to win the encounter. Monsters often act first and can completely disable your party for the first few rounds with paralysis or sleep, and from there it's fighting an uphill battle. Thankfully, you're still able to retry if you fail, but not having that ability would make this game impossible to enjoy without saving before every battle. What stops you from being overwhelmed entirely are the new spells and abilities at your disposal. Like a more traditional RPG, as you level up you gain more options, and your higher level options are almost always better. Eventually, combat becomes a bit of memorization of the dominant strategy. For example, during the water chapter, it often involved putting enemies to sleep with Phoebe, as Benjamin buffed her magic stat, only to hit him with the most powerful attack I had. After I managed to figure that out, combat became unbalanced in another way, and because of the abundance of magic restoring items, there was no real deterrent not to do this. It goes between two extremes, and it never really feels like there's a fair fight on either side. Of course, to get to that point, you need to grind. But because the combat is so brutal, it's not as simple as turn your mind off for a few levels. Not only that, but when monsters are defeated, they're gone for the rest of the game, meaning the fights that you can handle are in short supply. It's interesting because in a way the game keeps you moving, but as a result the game is always on the cusp of barely manageable. And as the game continues on, you aren't just limited to 2 characters, but eventually gain up to 4, which is actually a welcome addition to this remaster, and it makes it play more like a traditional Final Fantasy title. You also have the ability to change your equipment and boost your stats using refreshers. And you eventually unlock bonus content which allows you to take some of the game's toughest bosses and earn equipment and spells to make the rest of the game laughably simple. Despite my complaints, I enjoyed the combat far more than I did the originals. It was frustrating, but the challenge was appreciated. though with this change it clearly separates itself from its entry-level roots. And that separation causes another issue with the game, the plot. The plot of the original Mystic Quest was simple due to its intended audience, and more likely, the limitations of a cartridge. Seeing that the remaster is not bound by those constraints, it gives the opportunity to elaborate or redesign the plot to better suit the tone of the game. And it doesn't. For the most part anyway. Most dialogue is ripped straight from the original, with maybe a line or two added for clarification. There are attempts at a romantic subplot and some character development between the characters, but it doesn't go anywhere or amount to anything. This probably wouldn't have been bad, but it stands in stark contrast with the rest of the gameplay. Between the more difficult encounters and longer dungeons, the pacing is now completely off and the story elements fall flat in comparison. The remastering of Mystic Quest fell into the same pitfalls that a lot of companies do when remaking a game or creating a sequel. It looks at the base game and just copies its design without knowing why the design was there to begin with. As a whole, the experience of Mystic Quest Remastered is pulled in so many directions that it isn't sure what it wants to be. Does it want to be a tribute to the original? Does it want to be a re-envisioning to a traditional RPG? Trying to be both ends up satisfying neither. But the worst part of all this, it's not a completely terrible game. It's definitely flawed and weaker in terms of design of the original, but the intention was there. If this was intended to be purely a fan remake, it's actually pretty endearing. You can tell there was a lot of effort into making the dungeons as true to the original as possible, and keep as close to the source material as they could. This is one of the reasons I'm hesitant to assume that the entire intention of this game was to scam fans out of their money. There was actual effort taken to make this game enjoyable, and if the game had just ended as a fan-made project, it might have had a small amount of success. Sadly, that was not the case. This game was intended to be a retail release on March 13th, 2015, and had taken pre-orders, which was stolen from the people who had genuine hope for its legitimacy. That and the fact that several assets were stolen from other fans of the community and used their passion and effort to promote the remastered Mystic Quest. Every positive aspect of this game is corrupted and tainted with the actions of the developer. So what are we left with? Well, outside a bitter taste in our mouths, and a somber reminder that ethics are important regardless if you're a AAA publisher or a single indie developer, we're left without a chance to see the potential of Mystic Quest being reborn into something greater. It's a problem that the potential was possibly polluted. If this product was produced as a passion project on Patreon, I'd probably place a pile of pennies for its production. You're not gonna hit me? Nah, alliteration's cool. A lot of people look down on Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for being too simple, which is unfortunate because despite all its shortcomings, there really aren't too many RPGs that have done what Mystic Quest has been able to do. It's difficult to find time to invest 80 plus hours in the next epic Japanese RPG, especially if the first 2 hours is spent talking to NPCs and watching cutscenes just to find out what's going on and what you need to do next. Meanwhile, Western RPGs are often so big and open, it's not easy to just turn yourself off and enjoy the experience. There is room for JRPGs, WRPGs, and games like Mystic Quest. Did we miss out on something amazing with the remaster? No, not really. At best, it was an interesting 3-year effort that was destroyed by the actions of the man who created it. In its current state, it would have been too deeply flawed to recommend, even to those who enjoyed the original. Not to mention that the game has its share of glitches and bugs. About halfway through the game, I encountered an error that made the game unplayable for me. Most of the footage you are seeing was provided by the very generous Gunnar Dine. Check out his channel. As for Dark Design Games and Jake Jackson, chances are we will never hear from them again. Kizareth Studios, who created the Chronicles of the Dark Lord series, have attempted to wash their hands of Mystic Quest Remastered. Meanwhile, Square Enix hasn't done much of anything with Mystic Quest or the Final Fantasy Legends series. And Chihiro Fujioka has gone on to work with Nintendo on the Mario & Luigi Superstar series. It doesn't look like we'll see anything of Mystic Quest anytime soon, but there is some very minor uplifting news for those who are fans of Mystic Quest. After ignoring Final Fantasy Mystic Quest for almost 2 decades, Square Enix gave us fans hope that it wasn't entirely forgotten by including 2 of the game's battle themes on their 3DS release, Final Fantasy Theatrhythm Curtain Call. Yeah, it's a minor concession, but it's appreciated. With that, this has been SoberDwarf, reminding you that gaining experience builds character. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm wanting to spend the next couple hours running antivirus checks. Take care. Hey, special thanks goes out to Gunnar Dine for letting me use this footage from his playthrough of Mystic Quest Remastered. This video wouldn't be possible without him. Also, a deleted scene and a few outtakes wait for you above. Think of it as free DLC. And if you could share this video with anyone you think would like it, I'll be your best friend.